The animated television comedy The Simpsons includes a combination of original music and numerous uses of existing music. The show often uses music for purposes of characterization, parody, satire, and its no-brow ideology. Its characters are frozen in age, but the long-running show largely avoids contradictory time period referencing by telescoping its music and flashbacks within overlapping historical windows. The Simpsons' no-brow ideology means that it does not really privilege any one type of music over another, so that supposedly highbrow and lowbrow genres, and everything in between, are all treated just as irreverently. In 23 seasons and more than 500 episodes from 1989 to 2012, the creative team of The Simpsons used music in 6 primary ways, an average of at least 2 references per episode to existing music, frequently as parody, about 450 instances of original songs and/or lyrics, including brief examples, hundreds of end title, opening title, and other variations of the show's main theme, more than 6,500 background instrumental music cues, about 60 textual references to existing pieces of music, within title parodies, for example, and around 135 musicians as special guests. In terms of genres and styles, music references in The Simpsons varied quite widely. The show includes Danny Elfman's quirky, largely orchestral theme. It evokes the style of Hoyt Curtin's fun, quick themes for classic 1960s primetime animated television shows, especially The Flintstones and The Jetsons. However, Elfman's theme is his one and only contribution to The Simpsons. For most of the show's history, its composer and music and song arranger was TV music veteran Alf Clausen. Clausen and the show's writers provided numerous uses of cartoon music, TV music, musical theater, film music, pop songs, rock music, folk songs, hymns, jazz, world music, opera, and classical music. The show's references to existing music included parodies of music from The Flintstones, All in the Family, Cheers, Mary Poppins, Evita, Psycho, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Forrest Gump, hundreds of pop rock artists, Beethoven, Philip Glass, and so on. The Simpsons also included numerous guest voice stars. 30% of the show's guests were musicians, very few of whom were left entirely unscathed when they appeared as themselves in animated form on the show. Guest music celebrities included individual former members of the Beatles. In 1991's Brush with Greatness, Ringo Starr appears as a childhood hero of once aspiring artist Marge. In 1993's Homer's Barbershop Quartet, George Harrison makes 2 appearances. In 1995's Lisa the Vegetarian, Paul and Linda McCartney appear as the vegetarian friends of convenience store proprietor Apu. In 2008's Treehouse of Horror 19, a facsimile of John Lennon appears riding out of celebrity heaven on a yellow submarine. However, even apart from George Harrison's appearances, the opening episode of the 5th season of The Simpsons, Homer's Barbershop Quartet, oddly has by far the most references to the Beatles. Simpsons writer Jeff Martin had recently heard a barbershop quartet, the Dapper Dans, at Disneyland. He not only modeled the look of Homer's group, the B-Sharps, after the actual group, including their vests, bow ties, and boater hats, but he actually brought them to the recording studio to reinforce the barbershop singing of The Simpsons voice actors, Dan Castellaneta, Hank Azaria, and Harry Shearer. However, despite its partial focus on that pleasantly melodic old-fashioned genre of music, the episode also makes numerous references to the Beatles. Martin was a Beatles fan long before he encountered the Barbershop Quartet, but he then brought the 2 things together. Within the episode's first of several extended flashbacks to the mid-1980s, the original amateur version of the quartet sings Hello My Baby for Barney and Moe at Moe's Tavern. The song is a barbershop standard related to the early telephone era. The next flashback features the group singing another barbershop standard, Goodbye My Coney Island Baby. Entertainment manager Nigel, a smarmy Brit, begins to represent the group, and shortly thereafter, Barney replaces Chief Wiggum and makes his debut with the group, singing the lead of Sweet Adeline, another early barbershop song. Many people probably think of barbershop music as a white form, but it actually began among African Americans around the turn of the 20th century. By the time mainly whites were performing it, as of the 1940s, the resultant music was already considered to be part of a revival. The genre usually features 4 male voices, which can be lightly accompanied, but also clear structures, tonal, often very close harmonies, romantic lyrics, an earnest and heartfelt approach, a vertical chordal texture, and the melody in the second voice from the top. At the beginning of the episode's Act 2, we are back in the present, 1993. Homer continues with the group's story of attempting to find a more topical song than the very old barbershop songs that the group had so far been performing. In the resumed flashback, Marge's "Baby on Board" car sign inspires Homer to compose a new barbershop song, and the resultant recording becomes a highly unlikely #1 hit. Here's an excerpt.
Baby on board, how I've adored that sign on my car's window pane. Bounced in my step, loaded with pep, 'cause I'm driving in the carpool lane.
At the 1986 centenary of the Statue of Liberty, the now famous B-Sharps also reprise "Goodbye, My Coney Island Baby." However, after the group wins a Grammy Award, its success plummets, with poorly conceived songs about Surgeon General C. Everett Koop and the A-Team's Mr. T. As for the Beatles, in the episode's opening scene at the Springfield swap meet, Marge unsuccessfully attempts to sell such things as her various artworks. These include a painting of Beatles drummer Ringo Starr that is similar, but not identical, to her childhood one featured in 1991's Brush with Greatness. Among Comic Book Guy's LP offerings, Lisa spots a copy of Meet the B-Sharps. The album cover parodies the title and the cover of 1964's Meet the Beatles. Later, Nigel's directive to fire Chief Wiggum from the group is modeled on the Beatles having fired their original drummer, Pete Best. Moe the bartender also changes the name on his establishment's outdoor sign from Moe's Tavern to Moe's Cavern, thus referencing Liverpool's The Cavern, a venue at which the early Beatles frequently performed. The B-Sharps also emerge from an airplane to encounter screaming fans at New York City's JFK airport, and shortly thereafter to respond to questions from reporters. The sequence is closely modeled on the Beatles' first arrival in the U.S. At a Grammy Awards after-party, George Harrison introduces himself to Homer. However, Homer's enthusiasm results not from meeting an even more famous celebrity, but from ascertaining the source of the brownie Harrison is enjoying. In Act 3, again now back at home in 1993, Homer takes out a box of B-Sharp's memorabilia. Lisa expresses surprise at the group's short-lived fame, and Bart asks, "What did you do, screw up like the Beatles and say you were bigger than Jesus?" Homer replies that they claimed it all of the time, and the B-Sharps' second album actually seems to have been named after John Lennon's 1966 interview quip. The cover of Bigger Than Jesus is based visually on the cover of the Beatles album Abbey Road, with the B-Sharps one-upping the Beatles and Jesus by showing all 4 of them walking on water. In a related matter within the resumed flashback, Barney starts hanging out with his new Japanese conceptual artist girlfriend, a parody of Yoko Ono. Barney explains to the rest of the B-Sharps that he wants to take barbershop music to strange new places. He plays for them his collaboration with Yoko, featuring her repeated recitation of the phrase "number 8" in alternation with Barney's characteristic belching. The collaboration thus parodies Revolution No. 9 from the Beatles' The White Album. The scene also incorporates a parody of a well-known image of the frazzled, about-to-disband late Beatles. Towards the end of the episode, and back in the present, Homer picks up a copy of Meet the B-Sharps. Although the album's front cover parodies Meet the Beatles, its back cover, featuring Homer's butt crack, parodies the back cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The memorabilia inspires Homer to contact his old bandmates for a reunion. On a downtown Springfield rooftop, the B-Sharps reprise their several-year-old hit, Baby on Board. George Harrison pulls up in a limo, making a brief second appearance to exclaim, "It's been done." He means by this the Beatles' 1969 performance of Get Back and Other Songs on a London rooftop. The outfits worn on the rooftop by Homer, Barney, Skinner, and Apu are modeled after the contrasting outfits that were worn by Ringo, John, Paul, and George, respectively. At the end of the song, Homer also replicates John Lennon's cheeky question about whether or not the group had passed their audition. Here's the end of that version of the song.
Call me a square friend, I don't care. That little yellow sign can't be ignored. I'm telling you it's mighty nice. Each trip's a trip to paradise with my baby on board.
I'd like to thank you on behalf of the group, and I hope we pass the audition.
For the end of the rooftop performance of Baby on Board, Alf Clausen provides a jazz band instrumentation, and the episode then ends with a version of Elfman's main theme. However, throughout the episode, Clausen also efficiently quotes the theme to jumpstart us back to Springfield and/or the present for transitions from commercial breaks. He also provides dozens of other background music cues, as he does in all of the hundreds of episodes on which he worked. As for additional music, as we arrive at the Springfield swap meet at the beginning of the episode, there are references to the musical Les Miserables and to a Stradivarius violin. Comic Book Guy's offerings of LP records include Krusty the Clown's "Swonderful, Smarvelous, Krusty," which is a title parody of George and Ira Gershwin's song "Swonderful." The LPs also include an album by Melvin and the Squirrels, which the proprietor describes as having been a part of the rodent invasion of the early 60s. In other words, it parodies the children's music pop group Alvin and the Chipmunks. Comic Book Guy explains this rodent context further by playing an example that parodies the type of tape manipulations used to produce the high voices of Alvin, etc. Shortly afterwards, Homer suggests, in one of his remarkable leaps of logic, that in 1985 rock and roll had become stagnant and Billy Ray Cyrus's country pop hit, Achy Breaky Heart, was still 7 years away. Chief Wiggum is fired from the B-Sharps largely for being too village people, a reference to the contrasting character performers, including a uniformed policeman, of that disco-era pop group. The dismal audition prospects for Wiggum's replacement include Grandpa Simpson, singing a 1930s swing-era-inspired version of the folk song, Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Groundskeeper Willie singing a heavily Scottish version of Petula Clark's mid-60s hit, Downtown, and Grandpa's friend Jasper, hilariously singing the repeated words, Theme from a Summer Place. 2. Max Steiner's usually instrumental theme for that late 50s film. Then, Chief Wiggum shows up in disguise, singing If I Could Walk with the Animals, from the late 60s film musical Dr. Dolittle. There are also spoken and/or visual references to folk rock singer-songwriter David Crosby, the rock bands Spinal Tap and Dexy's Midnight Runners, rapper MC Hammer, Frank Sinatra, and Bob Hope. The episode also lampoons the Grammy Awards, one of The Simpsons' favorite recurring targets. Historian Lawrence Levine suggests that we need a, quote, open and fluid set of divisions, more conducive to facilitating the truly complex comparisons we presently lack, end quote. He also suggests that we have lost a, quote, rich shared public culture, end quote. Cultural theorist Linda Hutchin refers to the possibilities of postmodernism's, quote, complicitous critique, end quote. Also, she refers to the fact that from the perspective of the social and ideological production of meaning, culture is seen as the, quote, effect of representations, not their source, end quote. Music in The Simpsons provides a productive venue for creators and viewers alike to make open and fluid cultural comparisons, to explore our rich shared public culture, and to interact with the social and ideological effects of cultural representations.